The phone that remembered. Claire trudges home through the park, her boots scuffing against the damp asphalt as the evening settles heavy around her. The air hangs cold, thick with the scent of wet leaves and earth, stirred up by a restless wind that rattles the branches overhead. Streetlights flicker faintly, casting long, uneven pools of yellow across the path, their glow swallowed quick by the encroaching dark. She pulls her scarf tighter, her breath puffing out in small clouds, hurrying past the empty benches and skeletal trees that line the way. Something glints under a sagging bench ahead, a weak flicker of blue light catching her eye. She slows, steps closer, crouching low to peer beneath the warped wood. A phone lies there, old and battered, its cracked screen glowing faintly, the casing scratched and faded from years of use. She hesitates, fingers hovering, then picks it up, brushing off the clinging dirt. It's a relic, buttons worn smooth, edges chipped, but the screen hums alive, casting a cold sheen across her palm. She turns it over in her hands, the weight unfamiliar, heavier than the sleek devices she's used to. No one's around, the park silent save for the wind's low moan. So she slips it into her coat pocket, figuring she'll drop it at the police station tomorrow. Maybe someone lost it, she thinks, though the thought feels thin and steady against the quiet that presses in. She walks on, the crunch of gravel underfoot, the only sound, her shadow stretching long and jagged behind her. The night deepens as she reaches her apartment, a squat brick building tucked at the edge of town, its windows dark and uninviting. Inside, she kicks off her boots, tosses her scarf over a chair, the phone clunking softly against the table as she empties her pockets. Curiosity tugs at her, sharp and insistent. She grabs it, presses the power button, expecting a dead battery or a lock screen. Instead, it buzzes awake, the display flaring bright, battery icon full, glowing green against the cracked glass. One name sits in the contacts list, stark and solitary, Tom. No calls, no messages, just that name, etched into the memory like a scar. Claire frowns, scrolling through the empty logs, the silence of the device unsettling in its completeness. The wind howls outside, rattling the window panes, and she sets the phone down, its glow dimming but not fading entirely. She cooks dinner, pasta simmering on the stove, the steam curling up to fog the kitchen window. But her eyes keep drifting back to the table, to that faint blue light pulsing steady like a heartbeat. She shakes it off, eats in front of the TV, the murmur of a sitcom filling the room with hollow noise. Hours slip by, the clock ticking past midnight, her eyelids growing heavy as she sinks into the couch. A sound jolts her upright, sharp and shrill, cutting through the quiet. The phone rings, its melody old and tinny, a jarring tune from decades past that grates against her nerves. She stumbles to the table, heart thudding, grabs it. The screen flashes Tom, the letters stark against the cracked display. She presses, accept, holds it to her ear. Nothing, just a faint shush of static, like air moving over a distant line, and beneath it, a soft rhythm, a breath, slow and deliberate. Hello? She says, voice trembling slightly. The breathing stops. The line goes dead. She drops the call, switches the phone off, its screen fading to black. Her hands shake as she sets it down. The room suddenly colder, the wind louder against the glass. Sleep comes fitful, broken by the creak of the building, settling, the occasional gust that rattles the frames. She wakes late, sunlight weak through the curtains, the air heavy with the damp of last night's rain. The phone sits on the table, screen dark, but when she presses the button, it hums alive again, battery still full, glowing green. Her stomach twists, a small, sour knot forming deep inside. She scrolls to the gallery, finds one photo, grainy and black and white, a young man staring out, maybe 20, his face pale, eyes hollow, fixed on the lens with an empty intensity that prickles her skin. She stares back, the image, blurry but sharp enough to unsettle, his features plain, yet somehow wrong, to still, to vacant. She locks the screen, grabs her laptop, types Tom missing phone park into the search bar, fingers hesitating over the keys. A news article loads, old and faded, dated 15 years back. Thomas Kelly, 22, vanished in park, body never found. The text blurs as she reads, her pulse quickening. Tom went missing near the Prude. Last seen walking home, his jacket found, snagged on a branch by the water's edge, soaked and torn. No phone, no trace, just a name left behind in the cold. She sets the laptop down, stares at the phone, its cracked screen glinting under the morning light. It feels heavier now, a weight that presses against her thoughts. She should take it to the police, let them deal with it, but her hands don't move, curiosity gnawing at her resolve. The day drags, work a blur of emails and coffee, her mind circling back to that photo, those eyes, the breathing on the line. Night falls, the sky bruising purple outside her window, the wind picking up again, a low howl that seeps through the walls. She sits on the couch, the phone beside her, its glow faint but constant, a silent dare she can't ignore. The clock ticks toward 1, the room dark save for that blue light. It rings again, the same tinny melody slicing through the stillness, loud and insistent. She grabs it, screen flashing Tom, presses accept with a trembling thumb. Static hums louder, this time, and beneath it, the breathing, closer, a wet, ragged sound that fills her ear. Who is this? She snaps, voice sharper than she means. The breathing hitches, a faint whisper curling through. You where? The words slur broken, barely audible over the shush of the line. She drops the call, switches it off, shoves it into a drawer, slamming it shut. Her chest heaves, the room spinning slightly, the wind rattling the glass like a fist against the frame. Morning comes slow, gray light filtering through the curtains, the air thick with unease. She checks the drawer, half expecting it to be empty. But the phone sits there, screen glowing faintly, battery full once more. Her throat tightens, a dry ache spreading as she pulls it out, the weight cold against her palm. She scrolls again, finds the photo, unchanged, Tom's hollow eyes staring out, unblinking. She locks it, sets it down, but her hands linger, restless, tracing the chipped edges. The day passes in a haze, her focus splintered, every sound outside twisting into that tinny ring in her mind. She calls in sick, stays home, pacing the small space of her apartment, the phone a silent sentinel on the table. Night creeps in, the sky darkening to a deep, bruised blue, the wind howling louder, a mournful sound that presses against the walls. She sits, staring at the phone, its glow steady, unyielding. It rings again, sharp and sudden, the melody grating against her nerves like nails on glass. She grabs it, screen flashing Tom, presses accept, her breath shallow. Static crackles, the breathing louder, wetter, closer, a whisper weaving through. You where, Claire? Her name, clear and deliberate, sends a jolt down her spine. She drops it, the phone clattering to the floor, screen still glowing. She grabs a hammer from the kitchen, swings hard, the casing cracking, bits scattering across the wood. It goes dark, silent at last. She exhales, shaky, sweeps the pieces into a bag, tosses it into the bin outside, the wind cold against her face. Sleep eludes her, the night stretching long and restless, every creak of the building a faint echo of that ring. She wakes to dawn, weak sunlight spilling across the floor, the air heavy with damp. Her eyes drift to the table. The phone sits there whole, screen glowing faintly, battery full, no sign of the cracks she'd smashed into it. Her stomach lurches, a cold wave rolling through her chest. She picks it up, hands trembling, scrolls to the gallery. A new photo loads, grainy and dim. Tom, same hollow eyes, holding her keys, the ones she keeps on the counter, their metal glinting wet against his pale fingers. She drops it, checks the counter, finds the keys gone, an empty space where they'd been. Her breath catches, sharp and ragged, the room tilting slightly. She grabs her coat, heads to the police station, the phone heavy in her pocket. A weight she can't shed. The station buzzes with quiet activity, officers shuffling papers, phones ringing faint in the background. She sets it on the counter, explains, voice unsteady. Found it, rings at night, old case, Tom Kelly. The officer, a tired man with graying hair, squints at it, shrugs. Old model, probably a prank. Kelly's case closed years back, nothing to chase. He slides it back, dismissive, his eyes already drifting to the next task. She nods, numb, takes it, the cold casing biting into her palm. Back home, the apartment feels smaller, the walls tighter, the wind louder against the glass. She locks the phone in a drawer again, shoves a book on top, but the ringing starts, muffled, insistent, the drawer rattling with each pulse. She opens it, grabs it, screen flashing Tom. She doesn't answer, just watches, the melody looping, sharp and grating. It stops, silence falling heavy, but the screen glows brighter, a new photo loading slow. Tom, closer, holding her ring, the silver band she wears daily, now wet and tangled with dark strands, his fingers gray and thin around it. Her hand flies to her finger, finds it bare, the ring gone, though she'd worn it that morning. Her chest tightens, breath short and frantic, the room spinning as she checks the drawer, the floor, everywhere. Nothing. The phone buzzes, screen, flashing Tom. The ring piercing through again. She presses accept, static roaring, the breathing close, wet, a whisper cutting through. I'm here, Claire. Her name drags, slow and deliberate, a sound that claws at her nerves. She drops it, stumbles back, the wind howling outside, the air thick with a faint dampness that wasn't there before. The table bears scratches, faint and jagged, like nails dragged across the wood, a pattern she doesn't recognize. She grabs her keys, or tries to, remembers they're gone, checks her bag, finds her notepad missing too, the one she'd scribbled on yesterday. The phone buzzes again, screen glowing, a new photo. Tom, his hollow eyes staring, holding her notepad, the pages wet, ink smudged, his gray fingers curled tight around it, days blur, a haze of dread and sleepless nights. The phone rings every hour, the melody sharper, the breathing louder, the whispers clearer. I'm here, Claire. She stops answering, locks it in a box, buries it under clothes, but the ringing seeps through, the box trembling with each call. Her things vanish, keys, ring, notepad, a pen, a photo of her from last summer, each appearing in the phone's gallery, held by Tom's gray hands, wet and gleaming under the dim light of the screen. She throws it out again, watches it sink into the dumpster behind her building, the wind cold against her neck. Morning comes, gray and heavy, the phone back on her table, whole, glowing, a new photo loading, her sleeping, head on the pillow. Tom standing over her, closer than the bed frame, his hollow eyes fixed on her face, her missing photo clutched in his hand. She runs to a friend's place, crashes on the couch, the phone left behind, but it's in her bag when she wakes. Screen glowing, battery full. She smashes it again, harder, shards flying, buries the pieces in the trash, moves to a motel, locks the door tight. Night falls, the room cold, the air damp with a faint smell of rot. The phone sits on the nightstand, whole, glowing, a new photo. Her in the motel, sleeping, Tom closer, his gray hand brushing her hair, her missing pen tucked behind his ear. She screams, throws it against the wall, watches it crack, but morning brings it back, pristine, glowing, battery full. She runs to the park, the prude glinting dark under the moon, hurls it into the water, watches it sink, bubbles rising slow. Footsteps squelch behind her, wet and heavy, the air thick with rot. She turns, nothing, just her shadow in the water, eyes hollow, lips moving faint. She staggers home, the mirror fogged, scratches inside the glass, her face staring back, lips whispering Tom. Epilogue. A week passes, Claire's apartment silent, windows open, the air heavy with damp rot. The neighbor knocks, finds it empty, furniture untouched, a faint smell of prude water lingering in the hall. Outside, near the dumpster, a kid finds the phone, screen glowing, battery full. He presses a button, the contacts list, blinking. Claire. Night falls, it rings, the melody sharp and old, a whisper curling through. You where? The screen loads. A photo, her eyes hollow, standing beside Tom, closer than the frame, her ring wet on his gray finger, a new shadow forming slow in the corner, waiting.